Okay. So I'm live. This is real estate check-in, and your questions, my answers. And so I'm just gonna wait to see if some people log on here and ask any questions. If not, I've got some questions that I've been asked over the last couple of days that that I'll share and kind of touch on a little bit. Uh, so I'll just give it time, see if anybody logged on. Feel free to comment, ask me whatever questions that you might have. Got a little casual. Most people on a Friday night are casual, so I'm dressed up all the time. So I figured I would dress down tonight, just for this. Okay. All right. So this is Friday, February 16th. This is what I'm going to call real estate check-in, and I'm just going to go over a couple of things that I've been asked uh, here recently, and so this is primarily based around. So this is a local real estate conversation based in the Delmarva area, primarily Eastern Shore, Sussex County, Delaware, and just want to touch on how what you hear nationally and can be different than what is actually going on here at a local level. So if you see me looking at two different ways, I'm looking at two different cameras. Um, but not all the time what you see happening nationally actually translates to what's happening at a local level. So one of the things is one of the questions that I've gotten is, where is all the foreclosure inventory that used to exist? So one of the things that happened during the pandemic is they halted foreclosures. But the other thing that happened during that time frame is the fact that properties appreciated at a very high rate over a short amount of time. In most markets, our market, properties were appreciating about 40% year over year. So that means that if you had a house, and even if you were behind over that 2 year time frame when they halted foreclosures, you had a 40 to 80% increase in the value of your home. Therefore, when they started doing foreclosures again, you had enough equity to be able to even sell your house at a discount of a value and still be able to make a profit. And so the people that might have been in those situations did. But the other thing that happened during that time frame was the fact that there what exists now, which is the short sale process, didn't exist back in 2008. So those people that were still maybe upside down in the mortgage were able to go through the short sale process to be able to get their house sold, which again didn't lead to the foreclosure inventory being there that you would think have. Now, prior or after that, what I've seen happen now in our market is that as homes typically go through the foreclosure process, the last thing that happens before they get turned over to an asset manager or get bought back by the bank, they have to go to a foreclosure sale. What I'm seeing now is that investors are at that foreclosure sale, they're buying that house that typically would have sold back to the bank. They're buying it, and then they are rehabbing the properties and putting it back on the market as retail homes. So those homes that used to be foreclosures aren't coming on the market as foreclosures anymore. They're coming on the market as retail homes. And so you're not seeing them pop up. There has been some here recently over the last, I would say, 6 months that that don't make sense for investors to buy at a foreclosure sale because the amount that's owed on it is more than what they would want to spend to be able to reinvest into it and then put it back on the market. There's not enough meat on the bone for them to be able to do that. So, there's a few foreclosures that are coming through, but nothing near what you had seen before. And then the other thing is that there's so many buyers that are paying cash at these foreclosure sales now. You're not only competing with your local investor, you're competing with investment funds, you're competing with hedge funds, people that have a lot of liquidity and are looking for a way to be able to make a return on their investment. So, that's one thing that's happened to the foreclosure market locally. Let me check and see if there's any comments. So still no comments. So I'll just move on to the next thing. I'm just gonna keep it short tonight. Just have two things because there's not many people commenting right now. So what are the two? So the other thing is, like, what are the two factors that impact interest rates? So one of the things, and interest rates being the rate at which you are able to borrow money to be able to purchase a house. Rates right now are about 6.7%. Over the last couple of years, they've been under 5%. Last year, they went from under 5 to almost 7%. And that's because of inflation. So inflation in the Federal Reserve is one reason that your interest rate, that predicts what your interest rate is going to be. So as inflation goes up, when you hear things about the inflation numbers on the local news, if they say they're going high, expect for interest rates to start to raise, because the only mechanism that the federal government has to stop inflation is to raise interest rates. And so that's why whenever you hear things about uh, inflation, you'll immediately see that tied to your interest rates. The other thing that's tied to the interest rates and what you end up paying when you're getting a mortgage is what's called the 10-year treasury yield. And so that follows that interest rate adjustment. That spread between the treasury yield and what you pay for your mortgage is usually around 1.72 points. And so basically, if the rate is 4%, you could expect the rate that you get money from the bank to be 5.72%. And that's a historical average. Here recently, that average has been a little bit greater in anticipation of rates going up. And so therefore, what you'll see is that you'll have people that are anticipating, or banks that are anticipating a rate increase. And so they built in a little bit of a cushion. And if that rate increase doesn't happen, or that rate stays the same, then they're able to adjust their lending rate downward, because they have that 1.72 cushion built in. Or in some cases right now, it's like at 2.1. So they could still come down to 1.72, higher than that 10-year treasury yield, and still be able to make a profit as far as lending you money. And so those are the two things. So inflation and Federal Reserve and the 10-year treasury yield are the two things that really impact what your interest rate is when you go to buy a house. So just a point for you, if you hear like inflation numbers are going down, expect for your interest rate to start to go, or the lending rate to start to go down. That could be an indicator that you might be able to afford a little bit more than what you were previously in the last couple of months when you were pre-qualified. So those are the two things I'm just going to touch on tonight. The foreclosure industry, where that's at. You can look back earlier in the live and just catch that. And then kind of really what affects your lending rate, which is the inflation and Federal Reserve, and then that 10-year treasury yield that the banks follow. So thanks for tuning in. Real Estate Check-In. See you next week.